My wife returned from her 15-day Peru retreat, glowing and relaxed. No photos sent the entire trip, just hotel bills for two. I asked one question that froze her. Do you know what Kyle is sick with? She ran to the doctor. Too late. I'd recognized her lover's name from a CDC outbreak file. He'd infected people before. Now she was next. My name is Owen Harlow. I'm 48 years old, and I work as a health policy advisor for the Department of Health and Human Services in Washington, D.C. For the past 15 years, I've helped shape federal responses to disease outbreaks, pandemic preparedness protocols, and biosecurity measures. My job is to connect the dots between data and policy, to see patterns before they become problems. I'm good at reading between the lines of medical reports, budget requests, and sanitized briefings that hide the real story. So when my wife Angela sent me a text from Peru saying she'd arrived safely and was going dark for a bit to focus on the retreat, every alarm in my head started ringing. Angela and I have been married for 18 years. She's 42, sharp as hell, and works as a senior consultant for a multinational advisory firm. She travels maybe 4 or 5 times a year for conferences or client meetings, and she always sends photos. Always. That woman documents her life like she's running a travel blog. Airport lounges, hotel room views, team dinners, even the complimentary toiletries if they're fancy enough. But this trip? Nothing. Just that one cold text message and radio silence. She told me 2 weeks ago about this leadership development retreat in Lima. 15 days, she said, with 3 other women from her division. Team building exercises, strategic planning sessions, maybe a day trip to Machu Picchu if they had time. She'd been excited about it, talking my ear off during dinner about outdoor leadership challenges and networking opportunities. I'd helped her pack. I'd ironed her blazers. I'd driven her to the airport at 5 in the morning and kissed her goodbye at the curb. Now, sitting at my kitchen table with my coffee getting cold, I opened our shared cloud account and looked at the photo stream. Empty. Completely empty. Not a single picture from Peru. The location services showed she disabled them 2 days into the trip. Her social media, usually buzzing with updates, had gone quiet the moment her plane landed. But the credit card statements told a different story. I pulled up our accounts, something I rarely bothered checking since we'd always trusted each other with money. The charges were all there, time-stamped and geotagged. Luxury hotel in Lima, another in Cusco, then a high-end jungle resort in a place called Urubamba. Spa treatments, wine tastings, couples massage packages. Couples. I sat back and let that word settle in my chest like a stone. The hotel booking confirmations were still in her email, synced to our home computer. I clicked through them methodically, my hand steady even though my pulse was hammering. Each reservation showed 2 guests. Mr. and Mrs. Harlow, the paperwork said, except I was sitting in Virginia, and Mr. Harlow was apparently enjoying candlelit dinners and sunrise yoga sessions in the Peruvian highlands. I opened the company roster she'd forwarded me months ago when she joined the new division. Scrolled through the names until I found him. Kyle Sheffield, junior associate, 34 years old, Princeton grad, 6 months at the firm. Angela had mentioned him exactly twice, both times dismissing him as promising but green. Green enough to spend 15 days in paradise with my wife, apparently. I didn't throw anything, didn't punch a wall, or call her screaming. I've spent too many years in crisis management to react without information. Instead, I made a fresh pot of coffee, opened my work laptop, and started pulling threads. Because here's the thing about working in public health policy for over 2 decades. You develop relationships. Contacts at the CDC, friends at the NIH, former colleagues who moved into private sector biosecurity consulting, people who owe you favors, people who trust your discretion, people who understand that sometimes information needs to move quietly through back channels. And Kyle Sheffield's name had crossed my desk before. Kyle Sheffield wasn't just some random junior associate who'd gotten lucky with my wife. 3 years ago, his name appeared in a confidential CDC briefing I'd reviewed as part of a cross-agency task force on international disease transmission protocols. I pulled the archive files from my secure drive, documents most people would never see without clearance. The case involved a biotech startup in Ecuador where Sheffield had worked as a logistics coordinator during a gap year before business school. The company was running unauthorized trials on experimental antiparasitic compounds, cutting corners on safety protocols, using local populations as guinea pigs. When the outbreak happened, 47 people got sick. 6 died. The Ecuadorian government shut down the facility, and the CDC got involved because 2 American researchers had been exposed and returned to the States before showing symptoms. Sheffield was listed as a person of interest in the exposure chain, not because he'd deliberately caused harm, but because he'd falsified quarantine logs to cover his travel back to the U.S. after potential exposure. He'd lied about his whereabouts, lied about his symptoms, boarded international flights, while possibly contagious because he had grad school interviews he didn't want to miss. The investigation concluded he'd gotten lucky and hadn't actually been infected, but the pattern of behavior was clear. Kyle Sheffield put himself first. Consequences be damned. The case was settled quietly. The company paid out millions. Sheffield signed an NDA, agreed to never work in pharmaceutical research again, and disappeared into the corporate consulting world where background checks don't dig as deep. And now he was sleeping with my wife in Peru, probably still carrying the same reckless disregard for everyone around him. I printed the relevant pages, redacting the classified portions, but keeping the key facts visible. Then I made 3 phone calls. The first was to an old colleague of the CDC's Division of Global Migration and Quarantine. We'd worked together on pandemic response frameworks, and she owed me a favor after I'd helped push through funding for her department last year. "Owen," she said when she picked up, "it's been forever. What do you need?" I kept it simple. I need current health alerts for Peru, specifically the Cusco and Sacred Valley regions. Anything flagged in the last 60 days involving parasitic infections or waterborne pathogens. She hesitated. "That's oddly specific." "Personal interest," I said. "Friend traveling there. You know how it is." She did. 20 minutes later, my email pinged with a summary report. 2 alerts. One for a drug-resistant strain of Giardia, showing up in tourists who'd visited jungle lodges near Urubamba. Another for a rare fungal infection traced back to contaminated water systems in boutique hotels that recycled gray water without proper treatment. Both alerts recommended immediate medical screening for anyone who'd stayed in the affected areas within the past month. My second call was to a lawyer I'd worked with on health policy litigation. We spent 15 minutes discussing prenuptial agreements, marital asset protection, and the specific language in the contract Angela and I had signed before getting married. The clause about infidelity was ironclad. If either party engaged in documented extramarital affairs, the non-offending spouse retained full control of joint assets and property. Angela had insisted on that clause, actually, said it was about mutual respect and accountability. Funny how that worked out. My third call was to our insurance broker. I asked about travel health coverage, specifically whether our policy covered emergency medical treatment for tropical diseases contracted during unauthorized personal travel disguised as business trips. If the travel was misrepresented on the claim forms, he said carefully, the coverage could be voided. Fraud nullifies the contract. Hypothetically, I said. Hypothetically, he agreed. I hung up and looked at the calendar. Angela was due home in 3 days. I had 72 hours to prepare, and I wasn't going to waste a single minute. Because the thing about working in crisis management is this: you don't react to disasters. You plan for them. You build containment strategies. You document everything. And when the time comes, you execute with precision. Angela thought she was coming home to a husband who didn't know anything. She was wrong. Angela walked through the door on Thursday evening, looking like she'd just returned from a spa vacation rather than a leadership retreat. Tan skin, relaxed shoulders, a new lightness in her step. She dropped her luggage in the hallway and smiled at me like nothing had changed. "God, it's good to be home," she said, stretching her arms above her head. I'm exhausted, but it was incredible. So much growth. I was sitting at the kitchen table, hands folded, watching her. "Welcome back." She kissed my cheek, the kind of casual peck you give a roommate, and moved toward the fridge. "I'm starving. Did you eat already?" "I made dinner," I said. "It's warming in the oven." Her face brightened. "You're the best. Let me shower first. I feel like I haven't been clean in days." She disappeared upstairs. I heard the water running, heard her humming something cheerful. 15 minutes later, she came down in comfortable clothes, hair damp, looking refreshed and utterly at ease. We sat across from each other at the table. I'd made her favorite, lemon herb chicken with roasted vegetables. She ate with enthusiasm, telling me vague stories about team building exercises and strategic planning sessions. No names, no specific locations, just pleasant corporate abstractions. How was the hotel? I asked. Beautiful, she said. Right in the mountains. The altitude was rough the first couple days, but we adjusted. She blinked. The team. The four of us. Right, I said. The leadership team. She nodded, taking another bite. Sarah, Jennifer, Michelle, and me. It was nice bonding with them outside the office. I let the silence stretch for a moment. Then I slid a printed photograph across the table. It was from a hotel's Instagram account. A promotional post featuring their honeymoon suite package. The same suite listed on her booking confirmation. Angela looked at it, her fork freezing midway to her mouth. What's this? Your hotel, I said calmly. The Incatera Hacienda, Urubamba. 5-star resort. Couples packages. Romantic getaways. She set the fork down slowly. Owen, I can explain. I'm sure you can, I said. But before you do, I need to ask you something. Her throat moved as she swallowed. Okay. I leaned forward slightly, keeping my voice level and quiet. Do you know what Kyle is sick with? The color drained from her face, like someone had pulled a plug. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. What? Kyle Sheffield, I said. Your junior associate. Your travel companion. Do you know what he's sick with? I don't. He's not. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. What are you talking about? He's not sick. I barely. Angela. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. Do you know what he's sick with? She stared at me, and I watched the gears turning behind her eyes. The calculations, the denials forming and dissolving. The growing realization that I knew more than she'd thought possible. I need to make a call, she whispered finally. No, I said. You need to see a doctor. Tomorrow morning. First thing. Her hands were shaking now. Why? What did you do? I didn't do anything, I said. But you might have. She grabbed her phone from the counter and started dialing, her fingers fumbling over the screen. I watched her try Kyle's number 3 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. He's not answering, she said, her voice climbing toward panic. Why isn't he answering? I stood up and cleared my plate, my movements deliberate and unhurried. You should probably get some rest. You have a long day tomorrow. Owen, please. What's going on? I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt absolutely nothing. You made your choices, Angela. Now you get to live with the consequences. Angela didn't sleep that night. I heard her pacing in the guest room, making call after call. Kyle's number. Her colleagues. Someone from HR. Each conversation more frantic than the last. By morning, her eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. She came downstairs in yesterday's clothes, phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. I'm going to the clinic, she announced. Good idea, I said, pouring coffee. Come with me. No. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Please. I'm scared. You should be, I said without looking up from my cup. She left without another word. I waited until her car disappeared down the street, then made my own phone call to the attorney I'd consulted 2 days earlier. She's getting tested now, I told him. We should have results by tomorrow. And the prenup? Ready to execute the moment we have documentation. You're sure about this? I thought about Angela laughing in that hammock with Kyle, about the hotel receipts and deleted photos and 15 days of lies. I'm sure. Angela returned 4 hours later, ashen and quiet. She went straight to the bathroom, and I heard her getting sick. When she emerged, she looked 10 years older. They're running tests, she said hoarsely. Full panel. Tropical diseases, parasitic infections, everything. Results in 48 hours. I nodded. And Kyle. Her face twisted. His numbers disconnected. His work email bounced back. I called his office, and they said he's on indefinite medical leave. They wouldn't tell me anything else. Medical leave, I repeated. Interesting. What did you do? She whispered. How did you know? I finally looked at her directly. I know because 3 years ago, Kyle Sheffield was involved in a disease outbreak in Ecuador that killed 6 people. I know because he falsified quarantine documents and lied to federal investigators. I know because it's my job to know these things, Angela. I read the briefings. I saw his name. I remembered. Her legs seemed to give out. She sank onto the couch, hands covering her face. You went to Peru with a man who has a documented history of reckless exposure to infectious diseases, I continued. You stayed in hotels with known contamination issues. You shared food, water, probably a lot more than that. And you came home thinking I wouldn't notice. I didn't know, she sobbed. I swear I didn't know about any of that. You knew you were lying to me. That was enough. She looked up, mascara streaking her cheeks. Are you divorcing me? That depends, I said. On what the tests show. On what the lawyers say. On a lot of things. I made a mistake. I was stupid. I was feeling unappreciated, and he paid attention to me, and Angela. I cut her off. I don't care about your reasons. I care about the consequences. My phone buzzed. A text from my CDC contact. Got your results early. Call me when you can. It's not good. I held up the screen so Angela could see the preview. Her face went white. What does that mean? She asked. It means, I said, standing up and walking toward my office, that you should probably call your own lawyer. Because this just became a lot more complicated. I closed the door behind me, leaving her alone with her panic. Tomorrow, the test results would arrive. Tomorrow, she'd understand exactly how badly she'd miscalculated. Tomorrow, she'd realize that her 15 days of paradise had cost her everything. But today, right now, I had phone calls to make and documents to file. Because the thing about consequences is this. They don't care if you're sorry. The test results arrived via secure email at 7 in the morning. I read them twice before Angela even woke up, sitting at my desk with coffee going cold beside me. Giardia lamblia. Drug-resistant strain. Active infection. Estimated exposure window matched her Peru dates exactly. Treatment required, 12 weeks minimum, with monitoring for chronic complications. The report also flagged elevated liver enzymes consistent with toxic exposure from contaminated water systems. My own results, which I'd gotten tested as a precaution, came back clean. We hadn't been intimate since before her trip, something I'd engineered deliberately by claiming work exhaustion and sleeping in my office most nights. I forwarded both reports to my attorney with a single line. Documentation confirmed. Proceed with asset protection protocol. When Angela finally came downstairs, she looked like she hadn't slept. She saw my face and stopped in the doorway. You got them, she said. Not a question. I turned my laptop around so she could see the screen. Watched her read through the medical terminology. Watched her face collapse as the implications settled in. I'm sick, she whispered. You're infected. I corrected. There's treatment. It's manageable. But yes, you brought back exactly what I thought you would. She sank into a chair, staring at nothing. How bad is it? Depends. If you're lucky, 12 weeks of medication and you're fine. If you're not lucky, chronic digestive issues for years. Possible liver damage. The drug-resistant strain complicates things. And you? Clean. We'll need to stay that way, which means separate households starting today. Her head snapped up. What? I pulled out the folder my attorney had prepared. Prenuptial agreement. Highlighted sections. Dissolution paperwork already drawn up and ready for signatures. You violated the infidelity clause. You contracted a disease through extramarital relations. You used marital funds for the trip. That's 3 separate breaches of contract. Oh, and please. I've already moved half our joint accounts into protected assets. I continued. The house remains mine, purchased before marriage. Your retirement accounts stay yours. Everything else gets divided according to the terms you insisted on when we signed this. I'll fight it. With what? I asked. You're about to be fired, Angela. Your company's HR already contacted me yesterday as your emergency contact because Kyle's medical leave triggered an internal investigation. They found the hotel bookings, the expense reports you falsified. They know you lied about the retreat. Her face went from pale to gray. They can't fire me for that. For fraud? For misrepresenting personal travel as business expenses? Yes, they absolutely can. And they will. I stood up and grabbed my briefcase. I have meetings in D.C. today. When I get back tonight, I expect you to have your things moved to the guest house. We'll maintain separate living arrangements until the divorce is finalized. You can't just throw me out. I'm not throwing you out. I'm protecting myself from further contamination, both medical and legal. My attorney will be in touch about the timeline. Start looking for your own representation. I walked toward the door. She called after me, voice breaking. What about Kyle? Did he know? Did he do this on purpose? I stopped, hand on the doorknob. Kyle Sheffield disappeared 3 days ago. His apartment's cleared out. His car's gone. His phone's disconnected. Either he's dead or he ran. You found him. I had someone check. Professional courtesy. I opened the door. But here's what you should understand, Angela. Kyle used you. Maybe he knew about the infection risks and didn't care. Maybe he was just reckless. Either way, he's gone and you're stuck with the consequences. Where is he? Does it matter? I asked. He's not coming back. He's not going to help you. You're alone with this. I left her sitting there, walked to my car, and drove to work like it was any other Thursday. Because for me, I documented the exposure, protected my assets, and initiated the dissolution process. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Angela could cry all she wanted, but crying didn't change test results. My niece Emma called me that evening, her voice tight with concern. She was 23, my sister's daughter, studying public health at Georgetown. We'd always been close. Uncle Owen, she said, I heard about Aunt Angela. Mom told me. I'm so sorry. It's complicated, I said, pulling into a parking spot outside a restaurant where I was meeting my attorney for dinner. Is it true she got sick in Peru? It's true. There was a pause. The thing is, I need to tell you something. About Kyle Sheffield. I killed the engine and sat up straighter. You know him. We went to Princeton together. Different years, but we crossed paths at a few parties. He had a reputation. What kind of reputation? Emma hesitated. He targeted older women. Married women specifically. Professional types with money and status. It was like a game to him. He'd seduce them, manipulate them into paying for trips or buying him things, then disappear once he got bored or needed to move on. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Did he have a pattern with diseases? I don't know about that specifically, but I know he traveled constantly and bragged about never getting travel vaccines or taking precautions. He thought it made him tough. There were rumors he'd given people STDs and just ghosted them afterward. Why didn't you tell me you knew him? I didn't connect the dots until Mom mentioned Angela went to Peru with someone from her work named Kyle. Then I looked him up on LinkedIn and realized it was the same guy. Uncle Owen, I'm sorry. If I'd known earlier. It's not your fault, I said. But I need you to do something for me. Write down everything you remember about him. Names of other women he targeted, schools he attended, places he worked. Everything. You're building a case. I'm building a profile. Your aunt isn't the only victim. There might be others who don't even know they were exposed. Emma promised to send me a detailed summary by tomorrow. After we hung up, I sat in the car for a few minutes, processing this new information. Kyle Sheffield wasn't just careless. He was predatory, calculated, and Angela had walked right into his trap. Inside the restaurant, my attorney was already waiting. I slid into the booth and ordered a drink I actually needed this time. We have a problem, I said. Angela's not just a victim of her own bad choices. She was specifically targeted by someone with a pattern of this behavior. He raised an eyebrow. That actually helps your case. If she was manipulated by a known predator, it demonstrates poor judgment, but also explains the rapid escalation. Makes the breach of contract cleaner. It also means we need to report this to the CDC. If Sheffield's been traveling internationally while knowingly infected or at risk, he's a public health threat. Are you required to report? Ethically, yes. Legally, it's complicated. But if other women are at risk, I'm not staying silent. He made a note. That could blow back on Angela. If it becomes a federal investigation, she'll be questioned. Her travel will be scrutinized. Her company will definitely fire her to distance themselves from the liability. I know, I said, but this is bigger than our divorce. This is about containment. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're looking for Kyle. Stop. He's already dead. I show the attorney. His face went serious. Forward that to me immediately. And don't respond. Who would send this? Someone who doesn't want you digging. Which means you're getting close to something important. I forwarded the message, then pulled up my CDC contacts number. Time to make this official. Because if Kyle Sheffield really was dead, then someone needed to track down everyone he'd exposed before it was too late. And if he wasn't dead, then someone was protecting him. Either way, Angela's affair had just become a federal case. 3 days after Angela moved to the guest house, my niece Emma sent me a document that changed everything. 27 pages of names, dates, and incidents spanning Kyle Sheffield's entire adult life. 7 women before Angela, all fitting the same profile. Married, professional, financially secure, over 35. I sat in my office reading through Emma's research, impressed by her thoroughness. She tracked down social media posts, LinkedIn connections, even yearbook photos. Each relationship followed the same pattern. Kyle would target a woman in a position of minor authority over him, play the role of eager mentee, escalate to an affair, then disappear suddenly, leaving chaos behind. 2 of the women had gotten divorced. One had lost her job over it. Another had attempted suicide. Emma had found a blog post from that woman, written anonymously but detailed enough to verify. The shame, the isolation, the medical complications she developed after their time together in Costa Rica. I forwarded the document to my CDC contact with a subject line, "Potential public health investigation required." She called me within an hour. "Owen, this is bigger than I thought. If this pattern holds, we're looking at multiple international exposure incidents. I need to bring this to my director." "Do it," I said. "But keep Angela's name out of the official reports as long as possible. She's already destroyed. I don't need her humiliated publicly." "That's generous considering what she did." "It's strategic. If this becomes a media circus, my divorce gets complicated. I want this clean and quiet." That evening, Angela knocked on my door. She'd lost weight in just 3 days, her clothes hanging loose, her face gaunt. The medication was clearly taking a toll. "Can we talk?" she asked. I let her in, but didn't offer her a seat. She stood in the foyer like a stranger. "My lawyer says I'm going to lose everything," she said. "The house, the retirement accounts, even my health insurance once we're divorced. That's what the prenup stipulates. Owen, I need help. I can't afford the medical treatment on my own. The medication costs $2,000 a month. My company fired me yesterday. My COBRA insurance kicks in next month, but I don't have the money to pay the premiums." I'd known the firing was coming. Still, hearing it confirmed gave me a grim satisfaction. "You should have thought about that before Peru. So, are you just going to let me suffer? I'm going to let you experience the natural consequences of your choices. You're an adult, Angela. You made decisions. Now you handle the outcomes. I made a mistake." Her voice rose. "One stupid mistake, and you're acting like I'm a criminal. You committed fraud with company funds. You exposed yourself to a known health risk. You lied to me for weeks. That's not one mistake. That's a pattern of deception." She wiped her eyes angrily. "What about Kyle? He manipulated me. He targeted me. Doesn't that count for something?" "It counts for nothing," I said. "Because you're an adult with agency who chose to go to Peru. You chose to share a hotel room. You chose to ignore every red flag because it felt good in the moment. Kyle being a predator doesn't erase your responsibility. My lawyer said you're building a CDC case against him. She said if he's charged, I might be called as a witness. You will be, along with the other 7 women he did this to." Angela's face went pale. 7. I pulled out my phone and showed her Emma's document. 7 that we know of so far. "You're not special, Angela. You're just the most recent." She read for a moment, then lowered the phone slowly. "He did this before. Multiple times." "Yes. And you knew about this? When?" "I suspected from the beginning. Confirmed it 3 days ago. Doesn't change anything about our situation. It changes everything. If he targeted me specifically, if this was planned, then you fell for it." I interrupted. "Which proves you were willing to betray our marriage given the right circumstances. The manipulation doesn't absolve you. It just explains why you were an easy mark." She flinched like I'd hit her. "You're cruel. I'm honest. You're the one who confused kindness with weakness." She left without another word. I watched her walk back across the yard to the guest house, shoulders hunched against the evening chill. Part of me, a small part, felt something like pity. But pity doesn't undo betrayal. My phone rang. My attorney. "The CDC is opening a formal investigation into Sheffield. They found him. He's not dead." "Where is he?" "Mexico. Living under a different name. They're working on extradition." "This is going to get big, Owen. Federal investigation, international implications, multiple victims. Your divorce is going to be a footnote." "Good," I said. "That's exactly what I want." The CDC announced the investigation on a Friday morning. I watched the press conference from my office in D.C., my colleagues buzzing around me as the news broke across every major outlet. Federal health officials are seeking information about Kyle Sheffield, wanted for questioning in connection with multiple potential disease exposure incidents across South America. The reporter's voice was grave, professional. They showed a photo of Kyle from his corporate LinkedIn, smiling and confident. My phone exploded with messages. Colleagues asking if I'd seen it. Friends sending concerned texts. My sister calling to check on me. I ignored most of them and focused on work, keeping my expression neutral, even as Angela's name started appearing in connection with the case. Someone had leaked it. Probably inevitable with this many moving parts. By noon, local news in Virginia had picked up the story. D.C. policy advisor's wife among victims of health scandal. I went to lunch alone, bought a sandwich I didn't eat, and walked along the National Mall trying to process what came next. My career was solid enough to survive this. My reputation would take a hit, but nothing permanent. I'd positioned myself as the wrong party, the diligent husband who'd flagged the public health risk. Angela had no such protection. When I got home that evening, there were news vans outside her house. 2 of them, cameras pointed to the front door. I drove past and parked at my neighbor's house instead, walking through their backyard to reach my property. Inside, I found Angela sitting in the dark guest house, curtains drawn, phone turned off. "They're outside," she said when I knocked and entered. "They've been calling and texting all day. Someone gave them my number." "Don't talk to them," I said, "not without a lawyer present. Everyone knows now. Everyone in my old company, my friends, my family." My mother called me crying. She said I've humiliated them. "You did." She looked at me, her face hollow in the dim light. "Do you have any mercy left at all?" "I have honesty. That's better than mercy. Mercy implies you deserve protection from consequences. You don't. The CDC wants me to come in for an interview. They said it's voluntary, but my lawyer thinks I should cooperate." "You should. Full cooperation. Give them everything you know about Kyle, about the trip, about the timeline. It's your only move. And then what? After I testify, and this is over, what happens to me?" I leaned against the door frame, considering. "You start over. Find a new job, probably out of state. Rebuild your reputation somewhere people don't know your story. Get your health sorted out. Move on. Without you. Without me." I confirmed. "That part's already decided." She nodded slowly, accepting it finally. "I keep thinking about what you said, about being an easy mark. You're right. I wanted to feel important again. Kyle made me feel seen when you'd stopped noticing me." "I noticed you," I said quietly. "I just didn't perform it the way you wanted. I thought showing up, paying bills, maintaining stability was enough. Apparently it wasn't." "It should have been," she admitted. "I know that now. But it's too late." "Yes," I agreed. "It is." I left her there and went back to the main house. Stood at my window watching the news vans finally pull away as darkness fell. Tomorrow I'd give a brief statement through my attorney. Professional, sympathetic but firm. Yes, my wife had been involved. No, our marriage wouldn't survive it. Yes, I supported the CDC's investigation fully. Then I'd move on with my life, the same way I'd been planning to since the moment I found those hotel receipts. Angela could rebuild, or she could collapse. Either way, it was no longer my problem. I'd done my part. Flagged the threat, protected public health, maintained my integrity. The rest was just paperwork. 4 months after Angela left, I attended a public health policy conference in Atlanta. The keynote was about international disease surveillance and the importance of early intervention. My name appeared in the program as a contributor to a case study on identifying exposure patterns before they become outbreaks. They didn't name Kyle Sheffield directly, but everyone in the room knew which case they meant. I sat through the presentation feeling vindicated. My decision to report him hadn't just protected Angela and the other victims. It had prevented future exposures, shut down a predator who'd been operating for years. After the session, a woman approached me. Late 40s, professional, carrying herself with the careful dignity of someone who'd survived something terrible. "Mr. Harlow," she said, "I'm Rebecca Torres. I was one of Kyle's victims. Costa Rica, 5 years ago." I shook her hand. "Emma mentioned you in her research. I'm sorry for what you went through." "Don't be sorry. Be proud. You stopped him. You did what none of us could do because we were too ashamed to report it." She paused. "How's your wife?" "Ex-wife. The divorce finalized last month. She's in Arizona now, working for a nonprofit. She got through the medical treatment successfully. Last I heard, she's in remission." "That's good. I don't wish her harm. I just wish she'd been smarter." "We all do," I agreed. Rebecca handed me a card. "There's a support group. Women who were targeted by Kyle. We meet monthly online. We've been helping each other rebuild. If your ex-wife ever wants to join, tell her she's welcome. No judgment, just understanding. I took the card, genuinely moved. I'll pass it along. And Mr. Harlow, thank you for not protecting him, for choosing to expose the truth, even when it complicated your life. That took courage. After she left, I stood in the conference center hallway for a long moment. I'd done the right thing, not just for Angela, but for all of them. 7 women who'd been preyed upon, manipulated, infected, and abandoned. Kyle Sheffield would never get the chance to do it again. That evening, I called Angela. We hadn't spoken in 2 months, not since the divorce papers were signed. She answered on the 3rd ring. Owen, her voice was cautious. I met someone today who wanted me to give you something. I explained about Rebecca and the support group, gave her the contact information. There was silence on the line. Then, quietly, thank you. How are you? I asked, surprising myself with the question. Better. The medication worked. I'm clear now. No more symptoms. The job's decent. Phoenix is hot but tolerable. I'm rebuilding. Good. I saw the conference program online. They mentioned your work on the Sheffield case. You were right all along. About everything. Yes, I said simply. I'm sorry, Owen. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know I'm sorry for all of it. I know you are, and I accept your apology, but we're still not getting back together. She laughed, a broken sound. I wasn't asking. I just needed you to know. Now I know. We hung up shortly after. I felt something release in my chest, a tension I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Angela would be okay. She'd survive, rebuild, maybe even thrive eventually. But she'd do it without me, and I was at peace with that. The next day, I met with my attorney to discuss a trust fund. Not for Angela, but for the other victims Rebecca had mentioned. Women who were still struggling with medical costs, career damage, emotional trauma from Kyle's manipulation. You're setting up a fund for them? My attorney asked. Anonymous donation. Small amount. Nothing that'll hurt me financially, but enough to help with medication costs or therapy. They deserve support. That's generous. It's strategic, I corrected. Those women helped build the case that stopped Kyle. This is just compensation for their testimony. But really, it was more than that. It was recognition that not everyone had the resources I did. Not everyone could weather a crisis with assets intact and careers undamaged. Some people needed help, and I was in a position to provide it. Not for Angela. Never for Angela. But for the others who'd suffered without the safety net I'd built. That felt like justice. 8 months after Angela walked out, I attended a memorial service I never expected. Kyle Sheffield had been found dead in a Mexican hospital. Complications from the same parasitic infections he'd been spreading to others. Poetic justice, some might say. The CDC held a closed briefing for those involved in the investigation. They'd tracked his movements across 3 continents, documented 17 separate exposure incidents, identified 12 victims, including Angela. The case was now closed, the threat neutralized. I sat in that briefing room feeling nothing but professional satisfaction. Kyle Sheffield had destroyed lives through recklessness and manipulation. Now he was gone, and the world was safer for it. Afterward, I drove to Angela's parents' house. They'd asked to meet with me, something about closure. Her mother answered the door, older and grayer than I remembered. Owen, thank you for coming. Inside, her father sat at the kitchen table. He stood when I entered, shook my hand firmly. We wanted to apologize. For our daughter. For the position she put you in. That's not necessary, I said. It is, Angela's mother insisted. We raised her better than that. We taught her integrity and responsibility. What she did was inexcusable. She's rebuilding her life, I said. That's what matters now. Her father nodded. We know. She calls us sometimes. She's getting help, therapy, working through what happened. We're proud of how she's handling the aftermath, even if we're ashamed of the choices that led to it. She learned a hard lesson, I agreed. But she learned it. Angela's mother poured coffee, none of us drank. We want you to know that we don't blame you for the divorce. You did what you had to do. You protected yourself, and you were right to do it. I appreciate that. Will you ever forgive her? Her father asked. I consider the question honestly. I don't think about forgiveness anymore. I think about consequences and choices and moving forward. Angela made decisions that ended our marriage. I made decisions that protected my future. We're both living with those outcomes. That's as close to resolution as we'll get. They accepted this with the resignation of parents who'd raised a daughter who destroyed something valuable. I left their house and drove home through Virginia countryside, turning gold with autumn. Stopped at a farm stand and bought apple cider, something I'd done with Angela every October for 18 years. Stood in the parking lot holding the jug, feeling the weight of that tradition ending. But it didn't hurt. It was just over. At home, I found a letter in my mailbox. From Angela, postmarked Phoenix. I almost threw it away unopened, then changed my mind. Inside, a single page. Her handwriting, still familiar. Owen, I heard about Kyle. Part of me feels relief that he can't hurt anyone else. Part of me feels guilty for that relief. But mostly I feel grateful. Grateful that you were strong enough to stop him when I wasn't. Grateful that you protected other women even after what I did to you. Grateful that you showed me what real integrity looks like, even if I only understood it after losing you. I'm doing better. The infection is gone. My therapist says I'm making progress. I joined that support group Rebecca mentioned. We help each other. I wanted you to know that I'm using this experience to become better, not bitter. I won't contact you again. You deserve peace and privacy. But I needed you to know that your refusal to enable my self-destruction saved my life. Thank you for loving me enough to let me face consequences. And thank you for being the kind of man who reports threats even when it's easier to look away. You were always the better person. I just wish I'd realized it before I lost you. Angela. I read it twice, then filed it away in a drawer. Not as a keepsake, but as documentation. Evidence that people could learn, could change, could grow from their failures. Angela would be fine. She'd rebuild, find someone new eventually, live a different life than the one we'd planned together. And I'd be fine too. Already was, actually. My career had strengthened through the Sheffield case. I'd been promoted to senior advisor, leading a new initiative on international health security. My niece Emma had been hired by my department, brilliant and eager and untainted by the cynicism that came with too many years in government. I had good work, good colleagues, and the satisfaction of knowing I'd acted with integrity when it mattered most. Some nights I thought about Angela, wondered if things could have been different if I'd been more attentive, more romantic, more whatever she'd needed. But those thoughts were academic, not emotional. Curiosity, not regret. Because here's what I'd learned. You can't save people from themselves. You can only protect yourself from their choices and hope they learn from the wreckage. Angela learned. Kyle didn't. And I moved forward. That was justice enough.